Welcome to the Family Childcare Insights podcast, where we shine a light on family childcare, the unicorn of the early childhood education field. I am Patricia Dischler, and this is my partner, Donna Fowler, and we are here to question everything, including each other and many experts that are in the field doing good things for family childcare. We start every session with a little segment called What's on Your Mind? So I'm going to lob it to you, Donna. What's on your mind today?
One of the things that I do is I have a Google alert, and I actually have family childcare on my Google alert. So every single day, the web kind of searches through everything and kind of brings any articles that might have to do with family childcare or that have family or childcare in them. So a lot of times there are things in there that don't pertain to the work we're doing. But today I was super excited when I got on there and looked at the family child care alerts today. And I noticed that in Washington state, the Senate actually passed a bill. It's bill number 1199 that actually prohibits HOAs from restricting family child care in their communities. Yay! While it's not a done deal, it still has to go back to the House for any amendments. I mean, this is huge. I think when we talk a lot of days to family child care providers and talk about what is keeping you from either opening a family child care business, or if they're moving, what is keeping you from keeping your family child care business, a lot of times we're hearing it's HOAs, because most communities that are built now, subdivisions where family childcare is just the best option within that neighborhood, that it's being restricted by HOA covenants. And so I think this is huge. I'd love to see um, zoning follow through, that that there are state zoning laws versus these cities and counties being able to restrict family child care. But I'm going to take this win today.
It's a start. It's a
It's a
start.
start.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. So on my mind, um, not as big of a win. So very excited to hear yours. I had a lot of meetings this week where we were just talking about different organizations that I know some of those ARPA funds are being funneled through to get to providers, which is awesome. And unfortunately, what I'm also hearing is that they're really worried that not very many family child care providers even applied for these funds, that they were not sure of what the qualifications were, or if they'd end up having to pay it back at one point in time. And unfortunately, I think we rushed through putting all that out there so fast that there just wasn't the time to really fully inform that field and get the best engagement from the group. And so I'm getting a little frustrated by some of the data that it's putting out. I saw a couple of states that were touting this big number of, oh, we provided, this many dollars, and the average family childcare provider got $23,000. And I look at that and I was like, but if it only went to 10 people, it really didn't make that big a difference in our field. And I found it very interesting that the reports that I was reading were not sharing the exact number of how many providers got the funding. They were only reporting that they put out this much funding and this is the average amount that someone got.
I think what's interesting also is that I just recently, in that Google alert, one of the things that I also read about is that in California they passed a bill to give family child care providers additional funds, but they haven't received them yet. They were supposed to receive them either late last fall or early winter, and so the providers are really in an uproar. And I believe they have a union, it sounded like, that really represented them, that was trying to fight to make sure that they got the money that was promised to them.
Right, right. And that's, I think, probably one of the sad stories that came out of all of this. The good news is that, there it was recognized that there was a crisis happening in early childhood and in childcare, and that they needed help to survive. And this is important for families that this be a healthy ecosystem of childcare. And so the federal government responded to that. The funds were put out there to be able to support, but it's taken so long to get those monies into the hands of family child care providers that in many cases the damage has been done. It's already, they've closed down. They've struggled for as long as they can. We're in 2023 now. The pandemic hit hard in 2020. So here we are, almost 3 years later, and it's still not out there making the difference it was meant to do a couple of years ago. So I don't know. My other real concern about this, and I hope all that goes well and monies get out there and it helps everyone. But another concern I have is just the optics of there being these articles and reports out there to the public saying, hey, we just put all this money into childcare. We just gave all these huge, grant amounts to childcare businesses and family childcare providers, because then that leaves the public in that place where they're thinking, oh, okay, so they're good. We gave them a bunch of money and everything's fine now. And so it makes current advocacy work, I think, a little bit more difficult. There may be some hurdles there where they go to make that ask to say, hey, invest in this childcare crisis, and you get pushback. I worry that there'll be pushback saying, well, what do you mean there's a childcare crisis? We already threw a bunch of money at that. Why are you back here asking for more? And people forget that those ARPA funds was a one-time deal, and it's not going to make a big enough difference to completely change the trajectory. It was just there to fill the hole that was created during the pandemic, not to make long-lasting change. And the decline we've been having started way before the pandemic, so there's a lot of work to be done yet.
Yeah, and I know that you and I have discussed this prior. Is that I really do need um, think that we need to actually at the federal level they need to declare a national crisis when it comes to early care and education in general,
Right.
because it's I think that is one of the things through the pandemic we found out is just how vital it was. And like you said, it's family child care centers, you name it, closed. And a lot of a lot of folks that made it through just still have open seats. It's
Yeah, still
nobody
struggling.
knows where all the children went to, right? Where did
Right,
they all
right.
go?
Well, not even just the children, but the
Yeah,
staffing and,
yes.
the providers that are willing to do this, the teachers that are
Okay.
willing to do this. I think I had shared recently on one of our podcasts, maybe not. Oh, I think the last time I was talking, it was right before I was going to Philadelphia. So since going to Philadelphia, one of the things that was really hard to see there are there's this chain of really wonderful centers there. They're very well stocked. They're beautiful programs, beautiful classrooms, have a very dedicated, directors working at them. And they're at 20% capacity solely because of not being able to find staff.
Yeah.
They have the list of children, there's families that need them, and they
Yeah.
can't do anything for those families because they simply can't find the staff. So, yeah, there's a crisis that's hitting every sector of this early childhood field, and hopefully we'll declare that crisis and really do some hard work to do something about it.
Yeah. It's got to be a national emergency. That's the only way we're going to get the money that we need to lift up and support
Exactly.
the field. So
Today, we are really excited to welcome Bill Hudson, the Executive Director of the Family Child Care Alliance of Maryland. They have a very exciting project that involves family child care participation in school district pre-K, and we can't wait to hear all about it. Welcome, Bill. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks, Patricia. Thanks,
It,
Donna, for the invitation.
absolutely.
Well, I
So,
appreciate that.
full
That was
exposure
mutual.
here. We have known Bill for quite some time during our reign at the National Association for Family Child Care. When Donna and I each took our turns as president, we had the great opportunity to hire Bill Hudson to be the executive director of NEFCC at that time. He did a fabulous job taking care of everything that we hired him there to do. And he's been someone we've continued to call a close friend and colleague and keep tabs of what's happening with him out in the world of family child care. So we're excited to hear more about this particular project. Why don't you give us a basic rundown of
Thanks, Patricia.
what this project all is?
Let's see. The elevator speech is the Family Child Care Alliance was put together as a staff family child care network with Donna Fowler's help. So this is definitely coming full circle. Since that initial incorporation back in 2019, we've been predominantly focused on helping family child care providers in Maryland, eligible family child care providers, that is, become part of Maryland's mixed delivery pre-K system. So the key parts of our program are we take providers who are ready to go through their degree or already have one, who want to join Maryland's pre-K program, and we provide them intensive coaching and support, wide variety of other support mechanisms to help them get to the point where they're delivering a high quality pre-K program in Maryland's
So
mixed delivery
that's
system.
something that I think is really exciting about your program. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're supporting that pipeline of getting to that point where you've achieved teacher credentials and are providing school district pre-K?
Sure. We started in 2020 with a group of family child care providers. It was really an experimental year who did not have college degrees. It was a test we did in conjunction with MSDE to see if we could take a family child care provider who had not gone through an education degree and get them to the point where they were participating at the level in which the state wanted. We gave it a good effort in the middle or the beginning of a national global pandemic. After about 6 months, the state decided we need to go in a different direction. And since they're driving the program, we said, okay. So the following year, we basically split the program into two parts. One is those who have degrees and are working towards certification, and those who are still working on their first bachelor's degree. And that's the big distinction from our standpoint. From the provider standpoint, is if you have a degree and you're eligible, so you have certain qualifications and things like that, you can actually get paid by the state for each eligible child in your program. If you don't have a degree, you get the exact same services we offer in terms of intensive coaching, curriculum support, technology, range of other things, but you don't get paid by the state for each individual child and your eligible child in your program until you reach that degree point. And over the course of the last 2.5 years, because we're still that young, we've had several providers make that transition from non-degree to degreed, and we've had several, just one in the last week, who actually got her P3 her state certification to teach pre-K. And I think she's the third or fourth one in just a short period of
That's
time.
exciting. That's exciting. And that's one thing that I've always been really excited about this project about is that you're not just saying if you're already there, we're here for you, but if you're interested in getting there, we're here for you. And you have all those supports
Right.
to be able to do that. I was fortunate enough to get to help that very first year with those few providers and the coach that you had working there, and use our information in our balance survey to get things kind of started, help everyone really understand family child care and what it needs. And I think you have now grown to how many coaches?
We are currently at
Okay.
nine, eight. I'm sorry, we lost one this year, but we're at eight right now. And we're probably going to add
Oh,
one or
that's
two more in the
awesome.
fall.
And I know that your coaches have really worked hard to grow in their understanding of not only family childcare, but coaching, pre-K, all the different supports. They have a really holistic approach where they've built these wonderful relationships with the providers so that they can really see some growth happening in this project.
Right. And I think the work that you and Donna brought to the table early on, we mentioned the balance report gives us a good conceptual model to think about family childcare in this respect, because you've got the family childcare provider as an educator, the family childcare as a business person, and then
Right. And
as
I
a
think
person.
that's something that's really
And
unique
we were
about
very,
the approach that your coaches have taken is, we work with other projects where they just want to focus on that educator or they just want to focus on that business person. And, your program was really open right from the start to say, no, we want to be more holistic. We're going to also include that personal well being. We're going to take the time to really get to know them as human beings and get to know all of the things that are in their bucket that are affecting their work and their ability to move forward. And by doing that, you're having a lot of great success.
well, you're absolutely right. I mean, in terms of, we know the quality of education starts with the quality of the educator. And as with your balance report and the conversations we've had, we know that if your family child care provider is worrying about paying bills, if they're not healthy, if they're worrying about whether they're going to keep their home or so many other things, if that's on their mind, yes, they may be absolutely dedicated to being providing high quality pre-K instruction, but that's going to weigh on you just
Right,
like it would
right.
any other human. And so the more of those things we can help in one way, shape, or form to get those off the table, the better
Absolutely.
educator she's going to be, or
And
he's
in
going to be.
addition to having the coaches get to know them personally and be able to give that support, you are also providing them some really great supports for being an educator and a business person as well. Can you talk a little bit about what those are?
Sure. And that's one of the things we're sort of working with now. I think the first year or the second year, we were actually thinking we would provide or make possible business training. And we're doing some of that now with the Maryland Women's Business Center that has offices across the state. Um, and to the original vision of the organization as a staff family childcare network, what we're looking at now is how do we find other entities in the state that can provide that service so that we can focus on other things. And so, what the alliance is actually going to evolve into is what I think about is we're the connective tissue. So, the model we use is like a virtual school district. If you think of what a school district brings to the table in terms of all the resources around an individual teacher, as a family childcare provider out there by yourself, I mean, most of them work alone, you don't have all those supports. Well, we're figuring out, okay, what do those supports need to be? What do we need to do? And what can we find in partners to bring to the table so that we don't have to be business coaches?
Right.
We don't have to provide business training because there's another organization or multiple organizations in the state that can handle that. And in some cases, get funded to do it.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that Patricia and I recently had the opportunity to talk with the organization that took over all of Tom Copeland's work. And that
Yes.
was
Mm-hmm.
very,
Yep.
very
Yep.
exciting to talk about the work that they're doing and going to continue to do because we know that Tom Copeland was just so well loved in the nation for the work he did.
Right. Yeah. I think
I
he
do.
made a good choice there. We've talked to the folks,
You can say it's Civitas, yeah.
mentioning the name
Right.
Civitas, yes, we've talked to the Civitas people a couple of times. We've sat in some of their presentations. I was just caught part of the one on retirement just this past week or this week. So yeah, I think that's as far as I can tell, it's a good legacy for
I
Tom.
think so too. Donnie, you want
So
to?
yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the business wheel. We have also talked about a little bit about the personal wheel. I know one of the things that um, a lot of states and organizations have really, I want to say, struggled with is how do we actually provide that pre-K, the pre-K day? What does that look like? And I know that your providers and your coaches have been so open to really digging into curriculum and assessment and so forth. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the work you're doing there, but I would also love to hear about on the back end too, how are you measuring the work that's actually being done also?
Okay, so and that's it's hard to believe we're not even 3 full years old yet. It is a work in progress. We still use class, a pre and a post. So in the fall, we go in and have a class assessment for all of our educators, whether you're funded or not. This year we did a little something different because we've got several of our coaches that are class certified. So they're doing the ones for the unfunded, but we have actually Teachstone doing the ones for our funded providers this year. And then if you're the funded provider, the state has their instructional quality reviews twice a year. So they actually send one of their observers in the fall and again in the spring to observe your teaching. And to date, everybody this year, all 27 of those in the funded, have passed those observations from the state. And at the end of the day, that's your measure of success. Because if the state says that you're, based on our observation, you're qualified to continue pre-K teaching, we've succeeded. Now, we're not going to rest there. The question we're grappling with right now is how do we get people across that developmental curve and keep them going? So you can't stay in our intensive coaching program forever. When is the point in time that we put you out into a community of practice with less intensive touches from a coach or a community of practice leader, but nonetheless instill in you that desire for continual quality?
I think that's an important lesson for everyone in this field, is that you're never done. We're trying to inspire children to be lifelong learners. Then we need to model that. And your work is never done. When you can obtain a degree or certifications or complete fidelity of implementing a certain program, but we should always be growing. We should always be looking at new ideas that are out there. The idea of best practice does change over time. What was best practice 20 years ago is not necessarily best practice today. So it's really great that you're putting that right in the forefront of the conversation with those teachers, that okay, we're acknowledging that you've completed everything that we've set up, the different benchmarks we've set up to here, but we still want to be thoughtful about how are you going to continue to grow.
Right, exactly. And part of what the challenge in our particular program is, as you both know, there is a certain frame of reference or a certain mindset that goes along with running a successful family child care home. You have to switch that to what that mindset and framework looks like in running a successful pre-K program. There are elements in there that go across that, but even some of the better family child care providers in the state may not necessarily use their curriculum fidelity, or they may not use an approved curriculum. They may not do child observations like they're supposed to according to QRS. The requirements of the pre-K program in Maryland require you to have a robust family engagement plan, considerable professional development. If you're a P3 certified teacher, you have to actually take about 6 hours of college level classes every 5 years. So there's a different mindset that we have to get people to that point so that they recognize demands. But back to your question about evaluation, that's something we're working on now. Is one of the things we're considering is doing FECers. Because again, it gets back to the environment which I have set up that is a great family child care home may not necessarily translate to a great pre-K environment. Again, there are elements there, but is it fully featured the way in which you want a pre-K environment set up? Yeah. In some cases it may be, but we were finding that
I think that's the beauty though also, Bill, of the curriculum that you're using, is that it does have a fidelity tool that goes along with it that really does have a lot of the components from class and from the environmental rating scales already in it, so that it does make it easier to do some of those measurement
Oh,
things.
yeah.
I do have to say though, is that I really want to point this out for the people that are listening here today, is that a lot of times we think that family child care providers don't want to take on one more thing. And it's not that they don't want to take on one more thing, it's how do we help them do that next thing in their career or to participate in initiatives like this in a way that supports them. And
Right.
so I kind of want to be really clear about that, is that these family child care providers are participating in basically publicly funded pre-K.
Yeah.
They are using
Right.
a approved curriculum. They are using approved assessment. They are being assessed via class. They are doing the state's pre-K monitoring that other
Oh, yeah.
pre-K teachers have to go through. They are going through that educational process, but again, it's being supported along the way. So I know the state does pay for their college courses, but you're also your coaches are supporting them along that way to be successful. And then I think the other unique thing is that Maryland has really worked to ensure that family child care providers can get their teacher certification in their own home, where they no longer have to close their doors for 3 months to go into a public school to do their teacher practicum, which is huge because that has been a barrier for many years for family child care providers getting that teacher certification. And I think surprisingly enough, I think that when we embarked on this journey here, there are providers that did have degrees in early childhood education. They were just missing this one link that they now had to go through with support. So kudos to the
Yeah.
Alliance for really setting up, the supports that need to be in place in order for the providers to participate in this and be successful in a way that the state continues to invest in it.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I mean, the teacher certification and the residency, as it's called in some places, I don't know if everyone calls it that, is a huge sticking point, as it is for center-based educators as well. That we're not there yet because the requirements that are actually built into the law. There are actually some bills in the legislature right now to create some carve-outs so that we can make that happen. And we're being proactive around that. We're talking to universities, higher ed institutions, that when that happens, if they want to extend that to educators or family child care educators, we have staff on hand that can serve that supervisory function. I've got people on staff who are P3 certified already. Everybody on my staff, except for one, has a master's degree and has taught pre-K. One has a PhD. And several, well, at least one of them was an adjunct professor at a university. So we've got the woman power in this case to serve that purpose, so that if we can get that window open, we can actually provide those student residencies in their homes with our staff.
That's awesome.
So this is in its third year. It's grown every year. It's changed. 2.5 years. It's changed
yes.
A little bit every year. So what does the future hold for this? What are your hopes and dreams of how this continues to grow and flourish?
Great question. It's one of those things we talk about on a fairly regular basis. I think, from a 50,000 foot view, we are in, I think, 12 counties in Maryland right now with the paid providers. There are 24, 25 districts when you count Baltimore City. We're looking to expand in all of those over the next 3 to 4 years. My goal is, Bill's official goal is that by 2031, we have 500 family child care providers in the publicly funded pre-K program.
That would be just incredible.
That's pretty.
I like those big lofty goals. You know how we feel about those.
Well, we may have talked about this prior to the beginning of this program in 2020. Maryland is one of only 25 states that has on the books that family child care can participate in pre-K, but they had maybe 1 or 2 a year, and the ones who went through the program didn't come back for a second year. So our goal is to get to that 500. In order to make that happen, we have to build that true family childcare net, staff family childcare network. Because you pointed out, Donna, earlier, the educators we have in the fund, they're motivated. They are absolutely motivated to do this. And it's not so much one more thing I don't want to do. It's I can only do so much. And so what we have to do is find ways to take a lot of things off their plate, even if it's as simple as interfacing with the local school district. In Maryland, you can have up to monthly school district meetings with the community partners. Family childcare providers can't make that in many cases unless it happens to be at nap time. Other meetings that they can go to, serving as advocates for themselves within the school districts or possibly Annapolis or the state legislature. There are so many things that a school district does for an educator that a family childcare provider cannot assume all those duties. So what we have to build is that network around her, around him, so that they can offload things to us, offload things to our partners, so that they can truly focus on the business of pre-K.
And I think one of the things that that I'm thinking about and that I'd like you to talk a little bit more about is, like you were saying, the providers are very motivated to do this, and there's lots of motivation in here. There's the personal growth that can happen working with a coach that absolutely understands you and has a holistic approach, and a program that is there to be holistic in how they support you. There's the growth as an educator, knowing that you're giving them the training and the supports to fully implement a high quality curriculum. But this is also a really great business model for the providers. So could you talk a little bit about that and how that's a motivator, that as a provider running a family childcare business, there's lots of different kinds of family childcare businesses. There's different business models, different ages they serve, different ways they get funded. There's Head Start, early Head Start, private. Talk a little bit about the business end of this.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, Maryland passed some landmark legislation last year called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which is investing well over $3 billion, close to $4 billion in education. As part of that is a increase in the amount of dollars that are paid to a pre-K program for each child in their program, each eligible child. Now, right now, it's for children that live in families 300% or lower above the federal poverty line. I think that's the correct expression. That will actually increase over time, but at the bottom line is by 2031 in Maryland, if you have 8 eligible children in your program, your revenue is around $160 a year. And that's for 9 months, 6.5 hours a day. Now, obviously, we know family child care does before and after care, so tack that onto the situation. So Maryland will easily be, on average, the highest paid family child care providers in the country, or very close to it.
Incredible.
Obviously, in certain zip codes, you can make over $100,000 a year. If you happen to live in the right zip code and you have a good reputation, you can make a good living. But this means you can be in the far western rural part of the state. You can be on the far eastern part of the state where the poverty level is 10 to 20%, and still
which is still going to be so huge, Bill, because one of the things that we often hear is that providers don't have that opportunity to put away for a rainy day or for a retirement or anything like that. And when they're making the same wages, and they're actually probably going to be making up more than public school teachers at this point in time. When you calculate it, that it really, it brings, one of the things that, in the work that Patricia and I have been doing, and a lot of the data that we've been collecting is that quite often we see that providers are making bad business decisions and seeing higher behaviors, dysregulated behaviors from children, because they don't feel as if they have enough money to make it, right? And so this is one of those things where the stress of the provider not feeling as if they've got that money to feel secure, to buy their own health insurance, to buy their own, put money away for retirement affects the business wheel. They end up giving parents passes on things that
Right.
maybe they shouldn't, and that then because of that stress, children feed into that stress and so forth. So this is huge,
Sure.
right? Because it's
Absolutely.
really going to lift the
Oh, yeah.
field up in a way that not only it makes it very attractive for those who want to get into the field. I myself could see lots of public school teachers saying, "Yeah, no, I'm going that route." Um, if I can do it that way. But also just the financial stability and the
Right. Yep.
respect that I think we have way too long, I think, waited for in this field, that we are and that we're worthy of that money, right? That we are
Right.
Right.
providing the
Oh my gosh,
same
yes.
services that a child would receive if they went to their local elementary school.
Right. And we just did a survey of our funded providers, and somewhere around 20% said that as being part of our program, they've seen their family income go up by 50%.
That's
That's wonderful.
incredible data, Bill.
That's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
data.
And I think,
And you know what that means. It's on the
But I do
family,
have
just
to
the
give a
family
shout
itself.
out to the Maryland State Department of Education here too, because I think they
Oh,
were the
sure.
ones who took a leap of faith, right? They took a leap
right.
of faith and say, we are going to go out on a limb and we are going to fund this pilot program. And they've worked, I think, with the Alliance every step of the way. I know there's been some
Mhm.
stumbling blocks and, barriers to get around, but it's not as if they're fighting you on it. I think it's very much how can we
No.
work in partnership to make sure we're getting the legislation we need to and to redefine the program, which I think says a lot for them also about them also that
Oh,
they
yeah.
want to see family child care providers in Maryland succeed.
Yeah, I agree. And, we work closely, our liaison at the state was the head of the pre-K program for, community partners in the state. And we met regularly for like 2 years. And it really was a learning experience for everybody about how do you do this? Because when we got into it, there weren't a lot of great models out there. And I don't know if there's still a model that does it
I,
exactly the way
I
we
think
do
that's a really
in terms
key
of intensive
statement that you
coaching.
just made, that, being willing to say, how do we do this? And to figure that out.
Mhm.
And just because something's never been done before doesn't mean it can't succeed, doesn't mean it can't be done. It just takes a dedicated group
Right.
to
Yeah.
say, we're going to figure this out. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes and we'll probably spend more money than we should at first, but we will figure this out. And it's important to do this work that families, children, they deserve family childcare to be an option. There are young children
Right.
that thrive much better in family childcare than they do in center care. There are families, because of their hours or their days or their location, just, that this is a better option for them. And families should be able to have those choices for children. And I also think that this model
Agreed.
goes to something that I know that we've talked about, Donna and I, in past podcasts, that thought that it shouldn't matter who owns the walls when it comes to you as an educator. That you're saying that educator is an educator, a preschool district educator, whether the walls around them are owned by the school district or owned by their family. It shouldn't matter. Preschool care and education has a certain look, has a certain structure. You are ensuring that structure is met in family childcare homes exactly as how it is met in a classroom. And it can be done. And I think too often we always saw family childcare as something completely different. That somehow or another, the minute I called myself family childcare provider instead of calling myself a preschool teacher, that somehow meant I was less than or at least different. And I think this
Yep.
absolutely proves that that is not true. And an educator is an educator regardless of the walls.
Agreed. I mean, the way I think about it is if you're a nurse in a hospital, a nurse in a doctor's office, nurse in a school, you're
Exactly.
still a nurse.
Beautifully said, Bob. Beautifully said.
Um, yeah, and where we got to, but I was thinking our goal is that, and one of the things that we're experiencing in this, as you know, you've been in this field, is when you get an educator working at that level, that it impacts the children, the parents notice. And we have all these anecdotal stories coming in of, you know, child doing this and child doing that, the parents being amazed or the neighbor being amazed. And that's quality education is what that is. And we can deliver it in family child care environments. We're doing it every day.
Absolutely. I feel like I don't want to let you off the hook completely here. We've been talking about all the great successes and stuff, but if you had to identify,
Okay, sure.
a barrier, something that you wish could change, be different, or something that you're already addressing or working on as a barrier, what would those be?
How many would you like?
Couple is fine.
Well, I would talk about two. One is systemic and one is inherent in the organization. Systemic is that, Donna kind of alluded to the issue about the residency. But the other part in Maryland, and I expect this is going to come up in other states, the situation in Maryland is that you've had decades, hundreds of years, whatever, pick your number, of development of the regulations and habits and attitudes that go along with public schools. And I'm particularly focused on the regulations. And then you have something similar around family child care in particular. Now those two things are colliding like tectonic plates. And a perfect example is if you're a public school system, you don't get paid by the child showing up in your classroom. If you're in the Maryland public pre-K program as a family child care provider and you lose a child, that income goes away.
Excellent point.
Um,
Excellent point.
so, another example is it is written into the Maryland state code that if you're a new teacher in a public school system, you have to go through a 3-year induction process. And what that means is you get orientated to the school, and then you have coaches, mentors. There's a developmental program established for you, and the school district is responsible for ensuring that that happens. Currently, if you get into it in family child care as a pre-K instructor outside of our program, none of that happens. So sooner or later, there's going to have to be a marriage of what are we doing in the public pre-K program for K through 12 or public school systems? What gets overlaid onto family child care that was never done before? And then how do we mesh those two together that's not onerous? In here for the Alliance, our problem is, and I think we might have talked about this, is we are growing so fast. Our first grant was like $660,000. Our second was 2.5. The next one was 3.6. We're looking at over $4 million in the fall. We've got to build working capital to keep up with that. And that internally, that's our biggest challenge right now. All the other challenges seem easy by comparison.
Those are definitely some big ones, and I have full confidence you will figure these out as you move forward. But they certainly are worth taking a look at. This is uncharted territory, as you said. This is new, and things that used to seem very separate, very different, are now kind of commingling and colliding, as you said. We've got the history of laws and regulations that is always difficult to get those wheels to turn towards change, and can take much longer than the ideas of the people that want to put them in the place, which can be frustrating. So keeping that that momentum up of wanting, being willing to be in it for the long haul and see that change happen.
Yeah, and it's a little more complicated in Maryland since you have a part-time legislature and they're only in session in the spring or the winter and spring. So they'll go home shortly, and it'll be next year before we can actually get more legislation pushed in to make changes. But
it could be a legislator that meets every other year, though. So we'll take it at least part time. There are a few of those in the nation.
Let's take our blessings where we can find them, right?
Yeah. Well, this is super exciting, Bill. I have just, I've been, I started the journey with you on this and have gone into the background. I still keep up with what you're doing, even though I'm not always fully present for it. But I talk about this program and the work that you and the coaches and the teachers and the providers are doing everywhere I go, because I do think it's important work. And kudos to you and the board and the team for doing this work and continuing to do it. And I can't see what it looks. I can't wait to see what it looks like 10 years from now, because I do really think this is a model that other states should think about duplicating.
Well, everybody knows you are the godmother of this program. So that's part and parcel of this. But I will say 10 years out, the aspiration is 10 years out, we have a statewide staff family child care network. While PreK is part of that, it isn't all of that, because the issue is there are so many resources out there for family child care providers already, but frequently they aren't connected for one reason or another. Access is difficult. Finding out about them is difficult. The service provider doesn't know about how to find family child care providers in some cases. Funding can be a challenge. And in some cases, the resources don't exist. And so now we have to bring all these pieces together to build something statewide. So that regardless of what corner of Maryland you go into, there is not a family child care provider out there who
I
is
love
alone.
that. And I'm personally telling you, Bill, right now that if Early Head Start and Head Start open back up, I'm your girl. I'm going to be there. I'm going to write that grant for you, so I know that you can have that in your bag of tricks also, because Patricia and I do believe that there should be many different pathways for providers to participate, and to actually blend funding is really important. So there's no reason why I can't see a family child care provider doing a little Early Head Start and a little Pre-K at the same time.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of big lofty goals out there. We absolutely love the idea of a staff family child care network, and a lot of the work that Donna and I are doing right now is in supporting state associations and considering what that looks like and growing to that capacity. So on that note of big lofty goals and wonderful things already happening, and even more wonderful things happening for the Alliance, we just want to thank you, Bill, for being our guest today. This has been a lovely conversation. I think you guys are on the front edge of what should be happening in family child care in our country, and it is our hope that this podcast gets seen all across our country to inspire other states to do the same for family child care and support them. So thank you for being our guest today.
Yeah, and I want to leave it on a little funny note. I'm so glad you called me the godmother and not the grandmother.
Yeah, I understand. And we just touched on the tip of the iceberg. There's even more going on that we really
awesome. Well, then we will have to have a part 2. Yes. So everyone, please stay tuned because there will be a part 2. We will certainly continue to check in with the Alliance and with you, Bill, and hear more of your stories. And we can't wait to make that happen.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. That wraps it up today for the Family Child Care Insights podcast. We thank you for being here on this journey with us and spending some time with Bill Hudson from the Family Child Care Alliance of Maryland. And
Before we leave,
okay.
Where can they find information if they would love to learn a little bit more? Give us your website.
Thank you, Donna.
www.fccamd.org.
All right. We will have that on the
That's
screen as well
current.
for our listeners.
I will give you a hint. It is currently being revamped, so there will be a big unveil, hopefully by the end of the month. So what you see today is a shadow of what you'll
Oh,
see in
that's
the
Well,
coming
great.
that's
weeks.
exciting. I can't wait to check it out. Go
So, before we wrap up today, one of the things that Patricia and I like to do is always talk about what we are reading. We are both avid readers, read all of the time. And whenever one of us is reading a book, the other one's got to buy it because we have to be able to have conversations about it. So, Patricia, I'm interested to know what have you been reading or rereading? Because I know you and I both do also a lot of rereading.
Absolutely. So I'm definitely at the rereading stage, but I'm rereading The Art of Coaching. And I'm one of the reasons I'm rereading this is I actually bought Elena Aguilera's second book, which focuses on coaching with an equity lens.
Mhm.
And so I just thought before I dive into that book, I wanted to kind of refresh my brain about where she stands on just coaching in general. And then I'm moving into the second book. But this is just, I know this is one of our favorite books that you turned me on to in the first place, and then I quick grabbed mine. It's got your favorite quote in it. Do you want to share that?
Mm. Yeah, my favorite quote in the whole book is that people can't learn from you if you think that they suck. So, really gets to the fact that if you're going in and you think that people are bad at their job, then they can't learn from you because you've already judged them and made your determination. And I love that.
Yeah, I do too. Exactly. You always want to have that positive outlook, look for the win, see where those strengths are and build off of them. One of the things that has been sticking out to me in particular during this reread is I've had a lot of conversations with a few programs lately where you go in, you talk to them about coaching, and they're like, oh, we use such and such coaching model. I won't name them right now, but they'll name a coaching model that they use, which you and I both know they're all pretty basically the same idea. But they feel very strongly this is how we do it. And their idea of their perception of it is that it fully and totally puts it in the lap of the teacher, the family child care provider, to make the decision about what the coaching is going to be about with no framework whatsoever. And I have been rereading several of my coaching books and different, very specific strategies and coaching programs to find where does it say that, because I'm finding it doesn't actually say that anywhere. There's always a framework within which you're setting that overarching goal to achieve. That you want to grow as a teacher, or you want to grow in your knowledge of fidelity of a curriculum or assessment, or you want to grow in your child outcomes. There's always a program level kind of purpose that is the outer framework, and then within that framework, of course, you want the teacher to decide where do I want to start. What's working for me.
Exactly, Patricia. It's like asking an entire class of fourth graders, "What do you want for lunch?" Right? You're going to get
Yeah,
50 million, different answers and so forth. And so,
exactly.
again, we have to limit it to understand where it is that we're trying to go, but still
Right.
giving teachers agency and choice within that, right? And I think
Absolutely.
that's important. Well,
Absolutely.
I
All
I
right.
I
What
love
are
that
you
book too, and
reading?
I'm gonna have to. I have seen
You got to
her other
mark it
book, but I
up.
have not read it yet.
If
So,
your books are not all marked up with post-its and pages of highlighting and writing in the corners, you have not thoroughly read your book. Go read it again.
well, I just ordered a new book, and it just arrived yesterday, so I have
Yay.
not dug into it yet. But I'm super excited to dig into it, and it's Cultivating Genius: An Equity Framework for Culturally and Historically Responsive Literacy by Gouldy Mohammed. So, another friend of mine who I dearly respect actually had begun reading this book and had said it was a really good read. So I just ordered it. But I've been digging into something that probably a lot of people wouldn't take the chance to read. So a lot of the work that I do now is international work. And so I had joined an organization, the European Early Childhood Education Research Association. So every quarter I get research journals. And I've been making my way through the research journals. And I think these research journals are really focused on the fact that the United Nations years ago passed Article 12 that was really about children having a voice in their education, regardless of how little they were, that even infants should have a voice in where they're going. And so I'm excited to read it.
So thank you again for joining us. Thank you to our listeners and our watchers on the YouTube channel. If you haven't hit subscribe yet on that YouTube channel, please do so. We want to make sure you don't miss a single guest or conversation that we have with each other. And come visit us. Come to familychildcareexperts.com. You can check out links to all of our social media sites and get a hold of us to send us your questions that we can explore as well. And we wish you all well, and we want to see good things happen out there for family childcare, but we also want to see you asking questions. Don't be afraid to be that disruptor and start a new system like our guest here today did. Thank you, everyone.